Okay, love.
My arm! Can someone please call an ambulance?
We are talking The Apocalypse Box, and this is directed and written by James Eve. And as a low-budget British movie that I guess is kind of a horror thriller with a political edge, the nearest movie I would liken this to is Wishmaster, but it doesn't have a demonic character in this. I guess the antagonist here is a mysterious box. Now, let me give you a brief plot synopsis. This takes place on the eve of a general election here in the UK. And we have this candidate that is on the right of the political spectrum. I suspect somewhat modelled after Nigel Farage. And he has got this doting wife, but she has been getting some unkind things said about her in the press. And the night before the election, he gathers up a kind of cross-section of a few people, members of the public, to do a focus group about his wife. Or at least that's the excuse. So we end up with this kind of group of people, small group of people, the wife, her assistant, a member of the press. In this room, they get locked in, and there's the mysterious box. And they are told if they can unlock this box, which has got probably about 100 keyholes in it, and there's a variety of keys, they will get a wish. However, if they unlock the wrong lock, there will be some type of negative consequence. Now, what will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what I think works with The Apocalypse Box. So this is a low-budget movie, but it's one of these films where it has an interesting concept. So the budget here, I think, is not as a big a factor, because this is less about an effects-driven monster movie or disaster movie. It's meant to be a more of a psychological horror in some ways, with political tinges and an air of mysticism and magic, I guess. So it's an interesting sort of concept, and I kind of like the fact that we have a politically tinged movie, but it doesn't necessarily try and push a political message as such, because we have a variety of different kind of political views. So although this movie does make a little bit of commentary on the political status, certainly here in the UK, I didn't feel it was trying to hammer home a political message, which I thought was probably somewhat commendable to a certain degree. Although it does raise a few hot button topics here and there, but it never stays too long on it. So I thought that was, relatively fair of the movie. I think the concept here is quite an intriguing one, and it is kind of reminiscent of Wishmaster, where when people do get the wish, it's a kind of perversion of what they want, and may well be somewhat negative in its own right, you might say. And if they get it wrong, then we see like a little flash of a news report with Doctor Who Sylvester McCoy giving us a news report about some disaster that was happened. So there's some intriguing kind of things that are kind of develop here. I think the character of the wife is an interesting character. She's obviously married to this political figure, and she has her ambitions, but she does feel flawed. She does feel somewhat vulnerable, and thus makes her somewhat of a character that you can kind of feel sorry for and sort of root for to a certain degree. So that was pretty good. And the movie avoids really having to spend a lot of money on VFX by having this really very much a psychological movie, looking at people's reactions, their motivations, the way they kind of justify things and things like that, and tensions are raised through this kind of this experience. So it's very much on the human condition rather than spectacle. But there is a couple of kind of VFX shots. One in particular I thought was kind of fairly strong. I mean, they're on the lower budget side, but I think clearly this movie is very low budget, and as such it's using its resources sparingly and doesn't kind of overextend itself. So I think there is some interesting aspects of this movie that if you are wanting a kind of psychological movie with aspects of Wishmaster, then you may want to check it out. But let's talk about what doesn't work. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions in this film. I think this has an interesting premise and the idea is intriguing, but it doesn't really do the work in laying the groundwork about what's happened. And when we get really very, very little context about what this Apocalypse box actually does, how it does these things, how this guy's managed to get hold of it, what his actual end game is. I mean, we do get, I suppose we get an idea about what he wants, but it's so vague and there was so many variables involved. I don't really think it would have worked as a plan. But it just seems to be a lot of kind of stuff that's just glossed over in regards to the actual mechanics of how this kind of plot works. It's very much one of these things. It has an intriguing idea, but it's not fully expanded on, and it leaves a lot to be desired in regards to the minutiae of the details. I have to say I think the acting is a little on the weaker side. The characters don't really seem like real people, real reactions, and I think that some of their acting was a little bit on the hammy side sometimes. You know, I'm not going to point out specific performances. Some fare better than others, but for the most part, I think I have to be honest with you, the acting was on the weaker side. There's a little bit of kind of falseness in regards to some of the kind of the feel of the movie. There's a few instances where things are overly ADR'd and stuff like that, which gives it this kind of fake feeling. The VFX, when we do see them, again, it's a very, very low budget movie. So, you know, I'm somewhat forgiving of stuff like this, but, you know, it comes across as somewhat kind of cheap looking, to be brutally honest. And this is a film where 90% of it is taking place in one room with a bunch of characters static in one particular room. And I have to say, I think the characterization of some of these people is a little weak. Some of the kind of the players behind the scenes, as I say, you know, I think their motivation was seriously lacking, and it doesn't really. I didn't really feel like it made sense. And some of the characters in this room, again, you just feel like they are more caricatures rather than sort of characters themselves. I think overall this movie had some interesting ideas. I think maybe this is a case where it needed a little bit more development and a little bit more budget to make it a truly interesting movie, but as such it does have some elements that may be of interest to some people at least. But overall I would say it's a below average film without being a terrible film. So I'll give this one a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.